The National Fibromyalgia Association had a list of conditions commonly associated with fibromyalgia. This section of my videos is actually a do-over. I felt like I was all over the map. So I did organize it into medical specialties. I have been seen by a rheumatologist and had a good workup, although this is, you know, way above my pay grade, all of these things. And let's go through the list. And I'll go through as quickly as possible. And, pause the video if you like to read through more detail, although it's very limited. I just wanted to get through the list with at least a short definition of what it is. Lupus, autoimmune disease was listed in the National Fibromyalgia Association, and these are highlighted in red all throughout the videos. Okay, and that is, I would categorize a lot of these conditions either actual diagnosable conditions or symptoms. Fibromyalgia is a symptom. Fibrous tissue, muscle, algia, pain. So that's a symptom. Okay, lupus is a diagnosable condition and hard to diagnose, they say, because it can mimic other illnesses. It does cause inflammation and including the joints. Sjogren's syndrome is another autoimmune diagnosable condition, and some of the symptoms is feeling tired muscle and joint pain and thyroid problems. It also increased the risk of lymphoma. The most noted symptom is dry mouth and eyes. And throughout these videos, I'm going to give you some of the symptoms I had from Cushing syndrome and hypopituitarism. And I'm a little bit of a worst case scenario. I don't know if these things happen with other patients like me. But I did I don't have Sjogren's. I have seen a rheumatologist. It was ruled out. But I did have very dry eyes. I mean, and it was periodic, not all the time. But my eyes would get so dry and red, you'd think I had pink eye. But they were just very inflamed, I guess. Raynaud's phenomenon is a real sensitivity to cold to where the fingertips turn blue. And, okay, next slide. Okay, more on rheumatology. Let me briefly note, too, that the reason I got sent to a rheumatologist was to make sure there wasn't anything else going on alongside of my endocrine conditions, and because I had a ANA go in and out of normal a few times, and that's a red flag for autoimmune disease. And plus, my C-reactive protein was very high at one point, and that was more associated with hypopituitarism. Okay, moving along. Ankylosing spondylitis and enthesopathies kind of go hand in glove. The latter is when the vertebrae in the spine fuse together, and that's a characteristic of the ankylosing spondylitis. There's no cure for it. I hear it's very painful. God bless those people. But why in itself is a painful condition, so I don't really understand why it's listed as a association with fibromyalgia. It's its own thing. Okay. arthritic conditions. I more or less think of osteoarthritis as an orthopedic condition. That's the wear and tear of the joints. Most often you think of that from aging. And I'll talk more on that. Rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis arthritis, and gout. Next, we have complex regional pain syndrome, and this is a central peripheral nerve system inflammatory response that's abnormal. And what was interesting to me is some of the symptoms, changes of skin color and temperature are the main symptoms. I had a lot of trouble with my thigh muscles, and you could actually feel the heat coming off from them at times, although I did not have complex regional pain syndrome. I also had a very high degree of hypersensitivity to touch. It's not completely appropriate to this conversation, but my whole startle reflex was off the charts at different times. Jump out of my skin when the phone rang, kind of thing, or jump out of my skin, just being touched unexpectedly. Okay, next we have hypermobility syndrome. And maybe the Fibromyalgia Association was referring to Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. And this is an inherited condition. And I don't know a lot about it, but I know it does come in categories where, double jointedness to internal organ damage where things aren't holding together. There's actually a gal in my videos who turned up with Addison's disease, whose underlying condition was Ehlers-Danlos. Orthopedic conditions associated with fibromyalgia. Back pain, that's pretty generic. Cervical neck disc disease, myofascial pain, sprains and strains in the neck or low back, degenerative disc disease, mechanical low back pain. I developed all of these. The middle of my back is not so bad, but neck and low spine really were seriously damaged, especially starting with the Cushing syndrome. Myofascial pain. Myofascia is like the netting that surrounds your muscles, and there is a netting around your internal organs too, but it's like when it gets stuck, can really tense up the muscle. I'm giving it in the most basic terms. But I had no history of scoliosis and did develop that. Spinal stenosis I developed, which is the narrowing of the spinal canal. Disc injury, check, double check. All of these things, neck muscle things going on, turn wrong and I'd get a nerve twang. And I had no history of scoliosis. I spent a lot of time on my feet. I never had back pain till Cushing's came along. So these all could be a red flag of something else going on, deteriorating your muscles and bones. Let that be a heads up. People come up with these things on their own, that on its own accord, but, if you're having a lot of fatigue or other issues, it could be an underlying endocrine thing going on. Neuralgia paresthetica is essentially a pinched nerve, in your back where you have thigh symptoms. Non-dermatomal paresthesia is, a big word for whiplash. And that can potentially cause a pituitary damage. Just another heads up with the endocrine world. It doesn't necessarily cause it, but again, if you have other stuff going on, it sure could. Um, TMJ, yes, I did develop TMJ, because the joints are affected all throughout the body. And osteoarthritis, I'm going to give you a little bit of a story time. Again, I spent a lot of time on my feet. I stayed in good condition and turned up, waking up one morning with my knee in pain. So as it turned out, I had a bucket handle tear, which is a type of injury that occurs in a young person out on the basketball court, not someone turning over in bed, okay? They call it osteoarthritis, but again, it sure appeared to me that there was a lot more going on, to deteriorate that cartilage to such an extent.